Hello, everyone. My name is Caroline, and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited that you're joining me for this is my first episode on my new channel. Um, it's a journey for me. Life is about learning new things. And my first stop is with my friend Kim Singleton. I recorded this interview with her in December, and she just finished writing a great book that I want you to hear about. Look out for Kim. She is on the rise. I hope you enjoy it and watch the video to the end. And you like and subscribe. I'm going to pick someone and I'm going to send the book to you. So stay tuned. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on my first channel, and I hope you enjoy the show. Take care. I'm so lucky to have a good friend as a first guest. But not only is she a good friend, she's also an author of her new book, I Love My People. Kim Singleton. Kim, how are you?
I'm
Welcome.
great.
Can you see my book? Does it show
Yes,
up?
yes, it did.
You have to sign this the next time I see you.
Okay. Just let me know next time you're in New York.
I will
I would
definitely let
definitely
you
sign.
know. I will definitely let you know. Oh my God, I know you're very busy touring around, talking about your book, which is fabulous. I love it. We're going to talk more about it later. But for all the people out there who do not know about Kim Singleton, we're going to make this fun. In 3 minutes, tell us your story. Where are you born? Where do you live? Anything? Well, what should we know about Kim Singleton?
Well, I'll tell you in 3 minutes. I'll give you the abbreviated version. I'll give you the highlights. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, so I am a Southern girl. My
Nice.
parents met in Washington, D.C. in college, so I grew up in the Maryland area outside of D.C. I went to high school at Central Senior High in Sea Pleasant, Maryland. Go Falcons! I went to Howard University, HU, you know.
You
Um,
know it.
Yep, where I majored in electrical engineering. I worked as an engineer for Con Edison in New York for a few years, and then I went back and got my MBA in finance, where I was a finance professional, finance executive for a few decades. Then I eventually retired from corporate America, and I have my own video production company that's certified in the state of New York and in the city of New York as a minority woman-owned business. And I do video production, podcast productions, and now I am writing. So that's Kim Singleton in a nutshell.
Okay. This is why I didn't really know. You worked for Con Edison?
I was what HR told me, I was the first African-American woman engineer hired at Con Edison. So, that was a long time ago, but yeah.
It wasn't that long ago, but really, I didn't know that. Oh my God. So wait a minute. So what made you go from Con Edison to finance to being like into your doing this podcast? I don't, how did that
Well,
go?
people always ask me that. Growing up, my parents let me explore so many things. And I was always a fan of the arts. I was always like in high school, I was in a drama club. I'd be on stage singing and dancing. I'm not really a great singer, but I loved performing when I was in high school. But I was also good in math. I scored high on the SATs. I was a National Merit Scholar. And I looked at the careers in math, so I decided to go into engineering. I was good in math, but engineering wasn't really my passion. I was being practical. I looked at, okay, could I get a job when I got out of school? And so that's what I did. I majored in engineering. I graduated. I started working for Con Edison for a few years and just doing my work experience. Like I said, engineering wasn't necessarily my passion. It's something that I did. And when I started thinking about what my transition would be, I thought, part of my engineering responsibilities was to create proposals, appropriation documents, so we can get funding. And I realized that people who handle the money hit their hands in everything. So that led me to go back into to get my degree and get an MBA in finance, always thinking practically. But even along that journey, I always wrote poetry. I became a filmmaker, bringing my stories to the screen in various short films, and I did the film festival circuit. So I always had my foot in it. And then as you progress in your career and it's more stress, more pressure, more responsibility, you start thinking about, well, what's really my passion? So having worked for several decades and the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, Kim, is this how you want to live the rest of your life? So I decided to retire from the corporate job and just jump out on faith to do the things that I was passionate about. And the book I Love My People came about, so it kind of opened up new doors for me. So that's kind of how all that worked.
Wow, Kim, I listen, I met Kim, for people who don't know, I met Kim with our mutual friend under the hair dryer at at Joyce's salon, who we love. And I always used to love to hear her stories. And I'm just, when you said that, you were in finance and we worked together at another organization, and I heard this book, I was like, wow, you wrote a book? What made you write I Love My People? Why I Love My People?
It's interesting because, like I said, I always, even though, I was in corporate and dealing with numbers, I always had this passion for creating. And I always wrote poetry. And I Love My People was one of the many poems I had written at the time. It was 12 stanzas. And occasionally I would perform poetry. At one point, I was doing the open mic circuit, and then with various of the organizations that I belonged to as part of, their entertainment or poetry and prose events, I would perform it. So fast forward, I reconnected with a friend of mine who had received a job as a senior editor at a publishing company, Adrian Ingram. I love her. And we had connected for dinner just to like rehash old times and catch up. And one thing led to another. And she asked me to send a video of my poem, which I happen to have. She asked me to read it. And she just said to me, I want to publish it. And I was confused. I was like, but it's just one poem. I mean, she publishes books, but she
Wow.
had a vision for it. So one thing led to another. They ended up giving me a book deal. And then she just said, well, we're turning this into a book, Kim. So you can't just leave it at the 12 stanzas that you had. You have to expand it, you know. And, we had discussed what the format was going to be, what the look was going to be. And I didn't want it to be just poetry, because one of the things that we do is we look to see what else is out there. And what I used to try to describe to people is the biggest comparison was Amanda Gorman's book. They had published her book of the poem that she did at the inauguration. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just one poem going throughout the book. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, I get your vision. But I'm not an Amanda Gorman. So I was like, I need something a little extra to put some spice in it. Let's do some graphics. Let's put some pictures
Mm-hmm.
in so people can get a visualization of it. And I actually loved how it turned out. So I hope you like it too.
Oh my God. First of all, everybody, I love the way it turned out. And I know I have my blur on, but there's just so many great pictures of people, of, you know, it's just, everything that you love about the African American culture and history. Um, I know, I think we were talking beforehand. We talked about, one of the things that I love sci-fi. I think you said you love sci-fi too.
Love
You
it.
have I am totally Star Trek. Live long and prosper, my
Yeah.
friend. But I also love the fact that about adventurers. I like to travel, and I love you talked about Matthew Henson, you talked about Bessie Coleman. I think these are a lot of the things. You've got my man Neil deGrasse Tyson up in there.
That's my dude right there.
I
And
love.
the book is like it doesn't cover everything, but it's like when I originally started writing it, I tell people the story about how I was in the park one day trying to do my exercise on, which I need to do more of.
All
Um,
of us. Me too.
Yeah, and I saw these young teenagers, African American teenagers, just kind of telling jokes on each other, and they had me laughing hysterically because we are some funny people too.
Yeah, we
And
are.
a white couple came by, and they seemed to be intimidated by the loudness or the animation of these young men. And it just made me think there's so many things about us as Black people that other people don't understand and they're threatened by it. And so right then I wanted to, I just wanted to write down all the stuff that I love about who we are. And that's why the first verse is creative names, saggy pants, soul chain lines, that wobble dance. It's like, there's so many things that I love. And I just started writing, I kept writing. So that's it's my love letter to our people.
Oh my God, that's great. And I my favorite, you just talked about your first stanza that you really like. And I was like, we explored all continents with an adventurous flair, inspiring future travelers to discover and share. There was Matthew Henson first on the North Pole. I don't know if a lot of people knew that. And Arctic exploration was his ultimate goal. I
Mm,
love my people.
I
I
love
like that. I'm just saying, this is such a great book, especially I was thinking of like if you're having a stocking stuffer for Christmas, or Black History Month is coming up in February. This is something that I think, anybody would be interested in reading and learning. And it's a quick read and it's beautiful. I would like put this on my coffee table,
it.
because usually coffee table books are big, but this is a nice one. You could just sit there and just like, read it real quick. And I just like, oh, this is a lot. I learned a lot. Solomon Harper, Sarah Boone, Elijah McCoy, Black inventors made devices that all could employ. I mean, you go, I read it. I said, this is fantastic. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank
Um,
you.
what do you think do you think you want to do more books like this? Do you want to work on something else? What do you think you want to take this to? Because I think it's fantastic.
It's opened up a lot of doors for me. Like I said,
Right.
when I left corporate America, I was going to focus on just my video production company, which is, it's going along. I have some clients, but it never occurred to me to do my writing, the thing I did as a hobby, turn it into something that could be a revenue stream.
Right.
So I've been talking to my publishing company and they do want me to do some other things. Uh,
Uh-huh.
one of them will be to do another version of I Love My People for younger children, using like cartoonish kind of illustrations that, it's appealing to younger eyes. So that's in the work. I've had a few producers want me to turn it into a play, and again, I was like, a play out of one poem, but that's the same thing I said about the book, a book out of one poem. So, I'm working
We've
with,
done stuff like that before. I'm trying to
yeah,
think. There's something that is coming to my mind that
mm,
has happened. So
right,
keep
right.
going. I know you
So, so
got
those
it.
are those are things related to I Love My People, and it has encouraged me to kind of dust off some of the other writing that I have. One of the next projects I really want to do, and I kind of started doing the research for it. I found in my grandmother's things some letters that she wrote to my grandfather before they were married over the course of a year,
Mhm.
and it was in the early 1920s. And it's just so amazing. It gives you a snapshot of what their life was like as solid middle class African Americans out of Charleston, South Carolina. He was in Charleston, he was a dentist, and she was teaching at this school. I can't, the name of it escapes me, but he eventually became, I think, North Carolina A&T.
Oh
And
wow.
just the things that she shared, these little glimpses of history in there. That's why I had to do research, because she makes a reference to this lynching that kind of got around, it was big news back then, but I don't think people today really have it on their radar. So I need to research that a little bit just to kind of have the fill in the blanks for the details. And also she talks about the run on a bank in Charleston, South Carolina, because my grandfather, was opening a practice, and there was some financial issues. So it's like a lot of little meaty things in there. And there's references to one of her cousins getting like a car. It's just so many interesting nuggets in there that, I want to, put it in a format that I can share with a wider audience. So that's like my
Ooh.
next project. And then, I have another project where I'm writing a memoir with my mom, because my mom is a personality on her own, and she grew up in a solid middle class uh, neighborhood in the backdrop of the civil rights movement. One of the reasons she came up north is because my grandmother thought she had such a temper that my grandmother thought that she wouldn't live because she'd be right out there. But there's so many interesting stories in this middle class neighborhood, so many interesting characters. So she's writing from her perspective growing up, and I'm writing, growing up with her, who she was. She
Right.
had a quick temper, but she was a counselor in the school. She was the only one who could deal with the really bad kids. She would bring them home. It's just so many, it's so many of our stories that we need to tell that don't
Right.
necessarily have to be, you know, like drug empires and things like that. I mean, I don't knock anybody else's story, but I think the stories that they tell about us puts us into one box so much that,
Right.
it's not fair. They could tell their stories too, but let's tell some other stories that
Right.
give the depth of who we are and what we've been through.
Oh my God, that is I totally agree with you because it's just like there are so many stories in in Black people's history. It's the funny thing that you're saying that you're doing that with your mother. My mother wants to do the same thing as well. It's right about where my family came from, Barbados. So I think I'm looking forward to for reading that from you as well.
Mhm.
What about I know right now you have a show. Is it called Blacklit?
It's called Consider It Blacklit.
Consider it Blacklit. What are you doing with that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, well, that's one of my passion projects too that I really kind of kicked up after I left corporate America. So
Hmm.
Consider It Blacklit is a television show, weekly television show and podcast that features African Americans up front and behind the scenes in television, in film, and on stage.
Hmm.
And I have, stars of TV shows and films. I have independent filmmakers. I have entertainment professionals. I have, just in general, some of my friends, people who are film enthusiasts, to talk about different films. I also like to focus on classic films because there's a lot of classic films out there that I think are fantastic that a lot of people may not be aware of. One of my favorite is this movie called No Way Out. I think it was done in 1956 and it stars Sidney Poitier. But what's so amazing about this film, because in 1956, there's a little story in the plot where the white people decide that they're going to go to the Black neighborhood and beat up all the Black people, but the Black people get wind of it and they end up beating up all the white people. It's
What?
just crazy. I'm like, in 1956. So they
Really?
decide, yeah, it's called No Way Out, and it stars Sidney Poitier, and he's a doctor in the hospital, and he ends up having to treat the white man who hates Black people the most. It's just so many layers to unpack with that. And I was just amazed that this was actually released in 1956. And there's some other stories that are just very beautiful. There's a movie called Nothing But a Man, which stars Abby Lincoln and Ivan Dixon. A lot of people may know Ivan Dixon from the Black guy on Hogan's Heroes.
Right.
It's a beautiful love story. And it's just like, oh my goodness, people need to know about that. So I talk about those kind of things also. So, I'm
Where
really
can we
proud of it.
watch that?
Well, you can watch it on my YouTube channel, Consider It Blacklit. New episodes come on in New York, channel 1993 in Manhattan, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, but they air them sporadically. It's not as they do it in rotation. They don't have a set time, and in Newark. But for people who are not in the area, if they want to see the live show, they can go to mnn.org at 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings, or you can go to my YouTube channel, Consider It Blacklit. You may not be getting the episodes as they come out, but eventually they do end up on the YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to the podcast that's on all major podcast platforms. Consider It Blacklit. So if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, just do a search for Consider It Blacklit and subscribe, and they'll notify you when new episodes go up.
Oh my God, that's great. All right, I know I've seen a couple of them, but I will make sure because, I don't live in New York anymore, but I will.
We miss you.
I miss y'all too, but you know what? I'm all right. I'm all right. So let me ask you one more last question because, I was always impressed, like we talked about how you different careers and so forth. What advice can you give people who are like, man, I really stuck in this job and inflation but I really want to do something else. Like, how can you encourage people to just go and do what they feel is what their passion's about? Like,
well, my advice, just based on my experiences, be clear what your passion is. Because if you just go for it, just for the money, sometimes it may not work out in that way. But if you're passionate about it, it's a labor of love, and eventually the revenue stream will come in. I also say plan. Some people quit their job and they want to start a business right away. If you're passionate about something, and I say when you talk about being passionate about something, you may not necessarily see right away how it can be a business or how you can make money from it. But everything in this world, somebody's making money from it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're somebody who likes to knit, maybe you can't produce outfits, but maybe you can be a yarn distributor or something like that. But do your research, figure out what your passion is, do your research, figure out, what the business model is for whatever that industry is, and then plan for it. And in planning for it, I mean, before you quit your job, think about, do you have enough money? How will you handle your insurance? Can you afford to not make money in the first year? Who will your target audience be? Who will your clients be? Think that through while you are working. So for people like me, I was so busy all the time, and I used to make excuses and say, well, I don't have time to do that. But one thing I realized, the only person who can change your situation is you. So if you tell yourself you don't have time for something, it's not going to get done. So when I started my television show, the studio was right around the corner from my job. I made sure I went there. I took the classes to get training. And after I had a long day of work, I would walk around there and start taping my shows. So yeah, if you're passionate about it, you have to make the time for it. You can't make excuses because the company that you work for, their CEO, their stockholders, they're going to get their money. You have to make yourself a priority. And my mom always used to say, if you drop dead, they're going to get 6 people to replace you. Because if you're a person of color, you are working harder than everybody else. Trust me. Just take a piece of that hard work, give it back to them, and let that be towards your goals. So that's my advice. Plan for it. Don't let anybody discourage you. Give yourself a timetable. Think about everything, all the components that you may miss. Because I'm going to tell you, I had a good job. I made a lot of money, and I missed those checks every 2 weeks. But you couldn't pay me $1 billion to go back because of my peace of mind, and I'm doing the things that I love. So you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, and you have to plan for that sacrifice.
right. Oh my God, that's some great advice right there. Well, Kim, thank you again for being here. But tell us where we can get this great book.
Oh, I Love My People is available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and I encourage people to go to the African American Literature Book Club, AALBC.com, if you want to support a Black-owned business. A lot of people have Amazon accounts, so it's easy for them to order there. A lot of people know about Barnes and Noble, so it's easy to order there. Just put in I Love My People by Kim Singleton. But if you specifically want to support a Black-owned business. It's AALBC.com, African American Literature Book Club. And you can order it on there.
Thank you again, Kim. I really appreciate you being my first guest.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And good luck with everything. I just
Thank
love your
you.
whole concept, and I'm here. If you need any advice, you need me to come back on, whatever. You need me to
Yeah,
carry
I'll be calling you.
coffee, what you need.
I will be calling you. And everyone, stay tuned for my next episode, which will be coming out shortly. And I will be in touch. Thanks, everybody. Take care.